Topic today is platform versus game. The times are changing, to be sure. I mean, I think the conversation has been all around us this week. What is a platform? Where are we going? You know, the next platform, the next generation, the next big thing. Is it the last console generation? Gamers are playing games everywhere on everything. So the question becomes, does hardware drive game sales, or do game sales drive hardware? To answer that question, we've got a couple of really well-experienced people to talk to us today. And so we're gonna get into this. And I'm gonna ask these guys to introduce themselves individually, and I'm gonna start with Jeff Hutt from Blade Games World.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hutt. As Jim said, I'm the COO of Blade Games World. Been in the industry for quite a long time. I actually worked with Jim back at Nintendo in the late 80s and early 90s, and had a couple of stops at some technology and game development companies in between.
I'm Doug McCracken. I currently work for Euphoria Games. I'm the VP of Marketing, and we're working on a console-quality, browser-based first-person shooter. So we, you know, I come from the old console space, so it's really interesting to really see where the platforms are going and push the boundaries.
Hi, I'm Jeff Goodsell. I'm Vice President and General Manager of Stomp Games. I've run several game studios, and currently we're working on, similar to Euphoria, we're working on a 3D console quality game you can play on the browser primarily for Facebook initially.
Okay, so I think we got a bit of the pedigree. It's actually much deeper for all of these guys, and maybe we'll get into it a little as we dive into some of these questions. But the first thing I want to loop back to the question that I asked earlier in a general sense, and ask these guys each individually. Really, in today's market, what do we think is driving consumer purchases? Is the hardware driving the purchase, as it has traditionally in the past, or is it the games that are driving the purchase of the hardware, or none of the above? And if I can ask you to cite an example as well. I'm going to start with Jeff Hutton. As Jeff mentioned, he worked at Nintendo for many years on some of those leading games that were the defining games for those Nintendo consoles. So I think you might have an interesting perspective, Jeff.
Yeah. I mean, you know, as an old game designer, I like to think that the games always drive the hardware purchases. You know, I think that you know, as we advance and platforms, the definition of platforms has changed a lot. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, it was you know, the box that attached to your TV, and now it's like, you know, really the platform is, you know, whatever it is that you happen to be, you know, watching TV on, or actually I shouldn't say TV, but watching, you know, some sort of entertainment on, or playing a game on, and you know, so our platform decisions are driven a lot about, you know, itches that it scratches and, you know, where we are at that particular moment, and it isn't necessarily just attached to the TV. In terms of a specific example, you know, certainly there have been, you know, a lot of exclusive games. I mean, at Nintendo, that's a big part of the strategy of that company over the years, has been to have exclusive franchises and drive hardware sales by building really compelling games around those franchises. So I still believe that, you know, the game is, from a gamer's perspective, the game is still paramount.
Okay, thanks. Doug, you come at it a little bit different perspective. All those years at Activision and I think working on games like Guitar Hero, that was pervasive on every possible platform. So what do you think?
Yeah, most games I've worked on are very much trying to be platform agnostic, and we really believe in the brand. And I think at Euphoria, we're focused on delivering our game Offensive Combat on the platforms that have the lowest barrier to entry for users. So we are delivering a console quality game in a web browser, and we also have mobile, both tablet and mobile components that are connected both asynchronously and synchronously. So the platforms have really evolved over time. It's no longer that you're connecting one console to your TV. Now people have multiple platforms, and in fact, there are platforms within platforms. You think about the browser space. Obviously, Facebook is a platform within the browser space, and there are distribution platforms like K2 and Congregate and Steam, of course, and others. So I think it's really, the space is evolving quickly, and for us, it's all about experience. Obviously, being from you know, the development side, it's all about the gameplay experience. That is what is going to entice users. That's what's going to get people on your platform, having the right games. And you see this in all media, DirecTV has exclusive content deals with NFL and others. Netflix now is producing a bunch of TV shows that will be on their platform, and we see that with games as well in the console world. Nintendo, they're experts at developing their own content for their platform that really allows them to stand out.
Okay. Jeff?
So I clearly think games lead the technology first. So you make great games drive people to the platform. But I think there is a case that sometimes people are making decisions about the hardware first. So about 20 to 50% of a decision, people making decisions based on word of mouth, talking about it. So they're talking about the latest iPad, the latest iPhone, the latest console platform, right? Might be talking about the latest Xbox. And so they go out and buy that. They want to be cool. There's some status. People are looking at that. But in the end, what are you going to talk about? The Xbox, let's talk about the GPU. Or, you're not really, it's really about the entertainment value. Where is the entertainment value? And great games have always, I think, driven people to the platform first.
Okay. I think that you guys raised some interesting points. I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. Really, in today's marketplace, when we have, we have all of these platforms, whether it's the traditional consoles, the PCs of a certain spec level, or Steam, Congregate, Facebook, iOS. What is a platform anymore? What does it really mean? If you write to a subset of the available Android hardware, is that a platform? I'm going to throw it back to Doug first, since you guys are in mobile and browser space.
Yeah, I think there are different types of platforms. Obviously, there are hardware platforms, number one, which is iOS, iPhone, iPad, and then obviously the consoles, and Ouya is another console that was just announced, which is an interesting way to integrate free-to-play into the living room. And I think that the hardware platforms are really, have to be well integrated into the game, and they're always looking for content that will showcase their features, because there are interfaces, there are obviously connectivity and social issues with with getting the games up and running and reaching the biggest possible audience. So for us, it's all about finding the right combination of gameplay and features on our chosen platforms. And I would also add that there's another layer, are the distribution platforms that are purely about reaching users, essentially the new retailers in the digital space. So there are actually different types of platforms that are fragmenting the market quite a bit.
Okay.
So for our studio, we were working on a game that we wanted specifically targeted for the browser. 3D game you could play in the browser. And we decided to look at really what platforms we would best be served with. And rather than going broad, we decided to be narrow, decided to go with Facebook first as the largest network for what we're trying to do, and we have future opportunities. Then we take what we love to make, right? Our studio is based with a lot of people with RPG experience, and we really love to make that core RPG experience. So rather than making maybe a typical game for Facebook, more casual, we wanted to take the core aspect of what we'd like to make core games, the RPG aspect, and bring that to the platform. So our game is sort of a mix of core gaming for a more casual audience, but it's definitely bringing console quality to that platform.
Yeah, we kind of take the same approach in terms of a cross-platform strategy, in the sense that we don't want to, obviously we want to reach the broadest audience we can in terms of multi-platform, but, we also want it to be additive. It's like, we don't want to have it where, you got the same experience here as over here. We want to have it where, if you have a lean forward experience at your desktop, you have a lean back experience on your couch. And, and so that there's a little bit of a, opportunity there to have people playing both. And, there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of games that people play on their PC or their Mac, and then they also play them on the bus on their phone. And that's, we kind of take that same kind of approach. And, but make, as Jeff said, kind of, configure the actual experience so that it fits that particular platform. We're not just like porting it over and then calling it a day.
Right, so it's contextually appropriate for n number of platforms.
I absolutely agree with that as well, and I think an interesting way to think about it is each platform can provide a window into the same world, and they're all connected, and the ultimate ideal is to make those experiences impact each other and have relevant rewards for leveraging all those platforms and playing on those platforms for the gamer.
You basically, I'm sorry.
I was going to jump on that too. I agree. Really, when we're looking at 70-inch screens down to a 2-inch screen, the player experience on the different size screens, different input devices, touch versus mouse, keyboard, all the different ways in which you access the game needs to be designed for the strength of the platform and needs to be differentiated and not, in many cases, not ported.
Okay. I'm hearing that there are multiple platforms, platforms within platforms, platforms for delivery, platform for gameplay. So let me kind of loop back and say, it used to be that it was a clear definition of what the responsibility of a platform owner was. His job was to drive the installed base with those must-have big-budget AAA titles. The Marios, Zeldas, Halos, Forzas, God of Wars, Gran Turismos. But now, if iOS is a platform, if Android is a platform, if subsets therein, what's the role of exclusives on platforms? Is there still a role for exclusives? I'll start with Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is. I think that what the consumer, when I think about what drives the purchase of a particular piece of hardware, it's obviously not just about gaming. If I can get a particular television show, or Doug was talking about DirecTV. I mean, those types of exclusive content opportunities that I have as a consumer will oftentimes drive that platform purchase as well. But so I think that from a gaming perspective, I still think that the more exclusive content that a Microsoft or a Sony or a Nintendo have, or Apple or Google for that matter, I think that the more exclusive content that you can provide, whether it's gaming or not, it gives you a leg up.
I think from a platform perspective, it absolutely makes sense to have new content that nobody else can access on other platforms. From a game perspective, and I think from a consumer perspective, we really embrace the idea of being cross-platform and allowing consumers to interact with our brand on different levels and different ways. And the gameplay we're building for offensive combat really will help reinforce that. So I do think there is a place for content that is exclusive. Obviously, a lot of times it comes down to economic concerns and how is the deal going to be reached across the different parties.
As a developer with limited resources, I think many times it makes sense to focus on a given platform and with an idea towards expanding towards multiple platforms. But there's really no reason, there's few reasons there could be some exceptions, but generally I think you want to try to expand out to as many platforms as you can and take advantage of what those things are bringing you.
So you have more of a lead skew strategy, right, with a temporal exclusivity just by virtue of what's done first.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So let me ask you guys, as this is a significant paradigm shift from where we all came from in $60 console games. What have you done to change both your company and your products to adapt to these new models with multiple platforms and different business models? So, maybe we'll start again with you, Jeff, on the end.
That's a great question. Typically, the retail I worked initially, I got in doing Age of Empires, so it's a big PC RTS games with big launches, big marketing spends. Drive towards retail, get the game to be complete, finished, polished, polish it more, then ship it, do big launches. I think today that you see that less and less from a few. I think it's very much about getting the game into the user's hands as quickly as possible, driving that experience down to the user, and then iterating and constantly changing. I mean, I could talk about this for a while. So, but I think our company, many companies, probably all of our companies, are changing to less away from the big launch, and it's just get the game in and continually change it and iterate it, market it, go from there.
From our perspective at Euphoria, I agree with what you were saying. We're adopting essentially a software as a service model, which kind of enterprise software has already reached, right? And so what that allows us to do is to make updates on the fly that all of the users see, and there are no weighty downloads that will slow them down. So for us, it's all about decreasing the barriers to entry from a gameplay perspective. And we're really focused on what we call core games, but core games are really widespread now. If you see, Call of Duties of the world are selling 20 million units on a console, where you have to spend $300 for a console and $60 for the game. So we really believe in the idea of lowering barriers to entry so that everyone can play together. A lot of the traditional consoles create barriers to that cross-platform play and interaction. So for us, it's about lowering the barriers both from an accessibility perspective, being able to play in a web browser on any PC or Mac, and then also lowering the barrier to entry and cost, where we have a free-to-play game that users can get into right away, and also connect socially with virtually anyone in the world.
Yeah, I think that really resonates with me, where it's just basically making something where, regardless of where somebody is, that they can get involved in your community, participate, within your product, and have a kind of a ubiquitous experience regardless of where they are. I think that is kind of the cross-platform strategy of the era that we're in, as opposed to, in the old days of just making a game and then porting it over to multiple platforms.
Right. People are playing games on their way to work. They're playing them at work. They're playing them on their couch. They're playing them before they go to bed. When they wake up, they're playing them all. They're playing them in the bathroom, right? They're playing them everywhere, right? And so, as developers, we want to give them an experience in all those locations,
That's
in
right.
all those places, on all those platforms, right? And that's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me throw one more question out to you guys, and then I'm going to open it up for questions from the room. But I'm going to ask you to gaze into your crystal ball. I'm not sure if I'd asked this question 5 years ago or even 2 years ago, we would have thought we are where we are today. But I'd like you to just take a minute and tell me where you think platforms are going, games, and in particular, I want to ask you about consoles in the traditional sense as a platform, with Ouya out there, which is going to redefine what a console is, and with Nintendo, Xbox, and Sony still moving forward. What do you think? What's the future hold?
Well, I think, you can already, take an iPad game and stream it through your Apple TV, and with smart glass and things like that. There are ways to just have your game and go over to your friend's house and just say, hey, let's play Angry Birds together on the TV. I think that we're going to see more and more of those kinds of things where the hardware is less of the factor, and it's just more of just I've got this game, and I'm going to wherever I am is wherever the game's going to go, and it isn't necessarily chained to a particular location. I think that's going to be a big part of the future there.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with kind of the ubiquity and connectivity. And Newzoo actually had an interesting study about, basically they took consumers and they segmented them by platform, which I thought was very interesting. They looked at the entertainment screen, they looked at the computer screen, the personal screen, which is essentially mobile, and then the floating screen, which is more like a tablet. And actually, as of May, most people play games on computers. 91% of everyone has that platform, plays games, and actually it's the highest monetizing. All the dollars spent on games, 51% are spent on PC, which I thought was very interesting. So we're seeing a bit of a shift back to PC-based gaming.
Does that include a Facebook-type game that's
yeah, exactly.
monetized
Include
through
anything
the PC?
that is on a PC. And then another interesting stat that they threw out there was 22% actually play on all four. So I see that 22% really increasing over time as people bring more platforms into their households and multiple versions of the same platform in their household.
It's a great question. I wonder how much is enough. How many screens and access points do people currently have? Right? They have a smartphone, they have a tablet, one or two consoles, the PC, maybe several, right? They have streaming stuff in their car. It's all sorts of access in points. So I think the answer specifically in regard to console sales, at least the big ones, are declining. There's many reasons for that, but basically if consoles can continue to adapt and provide multiple opportunities for entertainment, not just games, through the platform, and you can do, then they will succeed. If they can't adapt quickly enough, I think they'll be left behind.
Okay, great. Before I throw it open to questions, I just want to make one note that I wanted to be sure to remind everyone. All three of these guys have products in beta. Jeff's company, Jumala, has a product that's a 3D game creation tool. It's making a game of creating the game. And I know that if you're interested in getting involved in the beta from Jumala, come and see Jeff. With Doug, Offensive Combat, come and see Doug. It's in a closed beta right now, but I think he can hook you up. And likewise, Jeff has another product, Robot Rising, which is in beta. You can go to robotrising.com. It's pretty straightforward sign up, and you can certainly come by any of these guys after we're done here and get hooked up for a beta. So, with that, have any questions?
Any questions? If people want to pose to the panel here. I know it's late in the day, guys, so perk up.
There's beer.
No,
Beer, not caffeine.
I got one. Okay.
No more beer.
My apologies if you already covered this and I just didn't hear it, but I heard some people in the industry say like with regards to console, we're heading to like a one console future. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that, I think that from a gamer's perspective, perhaps a game developer's perspective, that might be an ideal scenario. I think it's unrealistic. I think that, there will still be, large companies out there who will see money and an opportunity. And, and so I think that it would be nice if we were able to say, here's the standard for this experience or this location or this experience or that location, and we just start to, as developers, feed those channels in kind of, standard ways. I think that would be perhaps better for the consumer. On the other hand, maybe it cuts down on diversity and creativity. I don't know, but I think it's unlikely that we'll go to one platform.
I agree. I think the tools, though, to create games across multiple platforms will become better and better with time, because we're seeing, with Offensive Combat, it's a multiplayer first-person shooter game, and it's taken the team essentially less than a year, fully ramped up, to get us into closed beta. Where, with a small team of, we're at 28 right now. And the tools are just getting better and better to produce this content, and I think that will continue to allow better experiences on other platforms other than the traditional consoles.
Thank you.
I worry that would also create a lowest common denominator kind of a game strategy. I think if we've had these kind of conversations in years past, and I wonder if we would have had a Wii, if we would have had that kind of disruptive innovation, if there was a single platform or a common API.
A lot of time has been spent talking about the rise of, engines like Unity and such. And do you see people basically moving towards that standard? And if Microsoft adopts Unity for mobile, what do you see the impact being with your plans and what you're doing?
We're a Unity house. And
you are?
Yes, and we think it was the best choice to allow us to develop quickly and to iterate on multiple platforms. So, yeah, I love Unity. I think they're doing a great job. Their tool set's awesome. They continue to develop it and enhance it. And I've developed my own engines from the scratch. I've worked that route. I know all the arguments, pro and cons, to developing your own. But they're winning me over.
I'm not on the development side, but we're also a Unity shop as well, and we've been very happy with the tools they provide and kind of platform they provided for us to build our game.
All right. Well, where's Mark Rain when you need him?
Yeah. Well, he would take up his 20 minutes.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that.
Different platforms have sometimes different controls. So a lot of you come from very strong pedigree of gamepads and maybe keyboards and mouse, but now we have touch and Kinect stuff coming around. How do you tackle that with different controls having so much impact and being part of the platform and having so much impact on gameplay?
That's especially a challenge, I think, in the genre that we're playing in first-person shooters, because you know, playing a first-person shooter on a mobile device or even an iPad or other tablet device is very, very difficult. So we're actually looking at other experiences that we can create that are engaging both in an asynchronous and a synchronous way to connect to the online browser-based world that we have in offensive combat.
So we had that same challenge for Robot Rising. We're making an RPG. You have hotkeys. You drive with the mouse. You know, there's a lot going on in the keyboard, in your hands. That doesn't translate to the iPad or iPhone. So what we do is we look for ways to extend the brand. Having maybe for our game, it's about building up your robot. So you take your robot, and then you can use that to maybe do a tower defense, or do a scroller or a race. And you can take that and put that on an iPhone or an iPad, right? So you can extend the brand, take some of the assets you built, but design around that to give people a unique experience, but not throw away their work and their effort that they did to build, in our case, a robot. Right?
Any other questions for the panel here? Well, if not, I want to thank them for helping close off our platform and tools track this year. And I want to thank everybody for coming to Casual Connect this year, and we hope to see you next year as well.
Thank you.